We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we have reached the penultimate scouting report of the 2024 San Francisco 49ers draft class. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and kindly can I ask you to like, share, and subscribe to the show. Want to reach 1,000 subscribers by my wedding day. It's this Friday, so I'm sure you're watching this on Thursday, and if you're watching it on Friday, I'm getting a ring on the finger. So go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, and let's dive into the second to last draft pick of the San Francisco 49ers 2024 draft class. And it is arguably my least favorite pick of the draft class. And not because I don't like the player, not because I can't, understand why Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco decided to draft this player, but simply based on need, who was on the board, and the type of player this is, wasn't my favorite pick, and in fact, it was my least favorite pick of the entire draft class. So let's talk about 6th round pick 215 overall, Jarrett Kingston, offensive lineman out of USC. And let's talk about who was still on the board at the time. So obviously, coming into the draft itself, we all knew San Francisco needed to improve the offensive line, whether it be a tackle, a guard, a center, whether it be a starter, whether it be, some really good depth. Improving the offensive line was one of, if not the most important to do or checkbox on the list, right? And San Francisco drafted Dominic Puni in the 3rd round, which is a good pick. I like that pick. I like what Puni can become, but there was still a lot of talent on the board, not just that offensive line, but also at tight end and defensive tackle. Michael Jurgens from Wake Forest, Bo Limmer from Arkansas, and tackle Nathan Thomas were all on the board, and all 3 of those players I thought would be better fits and could actually, I don't want to say impact a game in year 1, but they aren't projects is how I'll word this. Whereas Jarrett Kingston is more of a project player. Now it's the 6th round, what do you expect, right? But I do think a player like Bo Limmer, who is undersized for a center, I don't think if he had to play this year, your world comes crashing down. I don't think if Michael Jurgens or Nathan Thomas come into play year 1, albeit you wouldn't want that for them, I don't think they would be, lost in a shuffle of I don't know what to do and be overwhelmed facing against NFL defenses. I think going to tight ends, players like Zach Hines from South Dakota State, who I think would be a phenomenal tight end as a backup for George Kittle. He can block, he can catch, he can do it all. He, I believe, went undrafted, but I thought a player San Francisco would value, knowing their tight end room kind of stinks, or at least is unproven behind George Kittle. Eric Saubert, a veteran blocking tight end. Cam Latu is still in the weight room and hasn't practiced yet. And Braden Willis, who I like Braden Willis, he's in year 2, and he didn't play much last year. Then you get to defensive tackle, Leonard Taylor. Now, Taylor went undrafted as well, like Zach Hines, and I can forgive not drafting Taylor because they got Evan Anderson in the UDFA class, who I do like a lot and I can see where he fits on defense. But then going back to tight ends, Dallin Holker's there from Colorado State, and the Jarrett Kingston pick really didn't feel like what could Jarrett Kingston really be in the NFL compared to Dallin Holker, Jurgens, or Bo Limmer? I think his potential is much lower than all three of those players I just said, and I think it's actually lower than Zach Hines. So that's the reasoning as to why I didn't like this pick. I thought the talent on the board was much better than who San Francisco took. But who is Jarrett Kingston? He played tackle at USC. He can also play guard and play center. I think he projects to be a guard, knowing his arm length is only 32 and a quarter inches. But he's 6'4", 306 pounds. Again, 32 and a quarter inch arms. He's a guard or a center. He played almost 400 snaps at right guard and 270 snaps at right tackle last year for USC. He's a fifth-year senior. He did suffer a leg injury in 2022, which forced him to return in 2023. So there is some injury history there, but is a player that's very versatile, can play tackle, can play guard, can play center, which I think if you're the Niners, you kind of have a big mix of, you have a lot of pieces you can shuffle around now, whether it be Pooney, Feliciano, Burford, Kingston, Zakel, Ben Barch, and others, Jalen Moore, Brandon Parker, Hubbard. You have a lot of pieces you can move around. In case Zakel's not cutting it at center, here comes Kingston. Where I also wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Shanahan views Kingston as a player that'll be the starter in 3 years' time or 2 years' time, once Jake Brendel is probably retired or at least playing elsewhere. And I also wouldn't be shocked if he likes Ben Barch as a backup center and wanted to get himself a backup guard for Aaron Banks once he's likely gone in 1 year's time. So, you can see the reasoning behind drafting a second offensive lineman. I don't think anybody in this fan base was like, a second offensive lineman? Why? It was like, okay, a second offensive lineman. But then you realize Kingston's not going to be an instant impact player. Granted, again, 6th round, what should we expect? And I don't even think we should expect Kingston to play much year 1, year 2, maybe even year 3. Now, if Kingston becomes a career backup guard and they can play in a pinch, that's a heck of a career, right? That's what you're looking for. Someone that can stay on the roster and give you, good enough as a 6th round pick. And it's not like Kingston, again, which is a running theme with this draft class, 5th-year players. But he's a project, and you watch his tape at USC, and, I don't know if you watched USC's tape a lot, or at least the games this year with Caleb Williams and company out there. That offensive line was atrocious for Caleb Williams. And as someone who is a Lincoln Riley hater, because of how he left my Oklahoma Sooners high and dry, it didn't make me too upset. But now knowing Kingston's playing with the Niners, it's like, oh God, why? Because the tape is so bad. And the anchor is just not there. He needs to become more dense. He needs to put on 20, 30 more pounds. But you also run the risk of losing a lot of the mobility he has, but the anchor is really bad. It's going to take a long time for Kingston to get his body right in the NFL. You put him at guard or center, he will get bull rushed to hell. I'm talking not even the strongest defensive tackles. We're talking, second string, the Hassan Ridgeways, the Kerry Hyders, the guys who you don't view as very strong or starters. They will push Kingston back. He doesn't have any anchor at all. And my fear is because he doesn't have the arm length, he's going to have to play the interior. And if he doesn't put on weight, which again, I think he will, but if he doesn't or struggles to get his body right, I don't really know if he can stick on a roster, which goes back to you could have had a tight end. You could have had a different offensive lineman that I think Limmer and Thomas and Jurgens should all make a roster and stick on a roster for the next 4 years. But Kingston just doesn't have the anchor as of now to play the interior, but 6th round pick, he's a project. Time will tell with his body, and I'll give him that leniency of, okay, I don't expect much from you the first 3 years of your career, but year 4, your contract year, what can you show? Now that said, you question the window. How big and how wide open is that window for San Francisco to win a championship? And would have taken Holker or Hines or Jurgens or Limmer not kept that window open, but just allowed you a little more, I guess you can say, leniency in case someone goes down to, hey, if Kingston plays year 1, you're probably doomed. But if Limmer or Jurgens play year 1, you're not happy about it, but you're not frantically looking for a replacement, right? You're like, okay, like, it's not ideal, but these guys were actually pretty good in college, whereas Kingston really wasn't that good in college. In fact, he is atrocious at picking up the blitz. So again, it's really going to have to be an all hands on deck. Can you actually teach him to pick up stunts, to pick up the blitz, to improve his body, get in the weight room? He is a pure project player. And if you are hearing Jarrett Kingston starting at center or guard or tackle at any game this year, expect whoever they're playing to go at them with their best defensive player and win probably 65 to 75% of the time. That's how little I trust Jarrett Kingston come day 1. But then you dive into Jarrett Kingston a little more, and then you like we've talked about all the bad things, right? No anchor, can't pick up the blitz. Then you find out why Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft Jarrett Kingston. And it's the same old for all the offensive linemen they've picked. You look at the RAS score, the RAS score, 9.94.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end,
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Kingston had the 3rd highest RAS score of any interior lineman in this past draft class. 99th percentile in bench press, 93rd percentile in shuttle time, 90th percentile in 40-yard dash, 89th percentile in broad jump, 87th percentile in verticals, 81st percentile in pre-comb, 80th percentile in 10-yard. He tested extremely well. Shanahan, when we were talking about the first round picks pre-draft, during the mock draft shows we were doing prior to the draft, we talked about how Shanahan, doesn't always go for the prototypical, big-bodied tackle. He doesn't mind guys that have shorter arms. He doesn't mind kind of zigging while others zag. He doesn't have this, you have to meet this criteria when it comes to height, weight, arm length, and stature. But he does have criteria when it comes to how you test. He wants athletes. And it's funny, Dominic Pooney had media availability, I believe it was rookie camp, and he was asked, not giving up a sack, but also, you tested well. Like you're a finisher. Is that something that San Francisco likes? And Dominic Pooney honestly said, he was like, these guys, being the Niners, have athletes everywhere. And if you can't keep up with them, you're not going to be on the field. They're going to be downfield. You have to be downfield with them, blocking for them. Now, while I think Jarrett Kingston would struggle with the anchor and defending, defensive tackles and, these big, just monstrous edge rushers and whatnot, if he had to play tackle, I can almost guarantee you Jarrett Kingston could get out and be running with your McCaffreys and your Ayuks and your Mitchells and other offensive players in this or on this roster. He's an athlete. That's why he was drafted by Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan said, you know what? I don't care you're 6'4". I don't care you have to put on 20 to 30 pounds and improve your anchor, and we will teach you to pick up the blitz. What you can't teach usually is athleticism. Sure, you can get a little faster here or there. You can make incremental improvements, but the fact is, if you come out and test well, which I'm not shocked that Garendo tested extremely well, picked him as the running back, which makes sense not just because of the testing, but also schematics. But then all their offensive linemen, whether it be Kingston, whether it be Drake Nugent, the UDFA center from Michigan, whether it be Dominic Pooney, all of those guys tested extremely well on the RAS scale. You look at, like, we've all been trying to crack the code on what Kyle Shanahan likes on the offensive line. Well, the code's right in front of you. It's the RAS score. If you're an athlete, throw height, weight, stature, all of it out the window. If you're an athlete, Kyle Shanahan wants you on the offensive line. He can teach you how to block. He can improve your body. That's what the coaching staff is for. What he can't teach is being an athlete. That's what Jarrett Kingston is. Now, diving into that a little bit further, in going back to shuttle time, again, Kingston 93rd percentile in shuttle time. 5 of the 6 offensive line prospects who hit a 4.47 shuttle time were drafted this year. San Francisco took 2 of them, Dominic Pooney and Jarrett Kingston. Again, the speed's evident. The explosion is evident. He can get off the line. He can run with your star athletes you consider your offensive weapons, your skilled position players. Kingston's not going to struggle there. He's a guy who can move and he can block guys in space, but he's at this point in year 1, coming out of USC, an abysmal pass protector and not a great run blocker. Now again, he's a project. Unfortunately for this team, well, I'll rephrase this. Unfortunately for Jarrett Kingston, the last project offensive lineman they took was Nick Zakelj. And Nick Zakelj hasn't really been able to find his footing. And in fact, I'm not really sure San Francisco has... I wouldn't consider it a successful training of Zakelj. And I also wouldn't say they're very successful in, coaching up their offensive linemen. They traded for Trent Williams. They signed Jake Brendel. They signed John Feliciano. They had Daniel Brunskill prior to. And they have Colton McKivitz. Now, that isn't to say Aaron Banks doesn't exist, but even Aaron Banks, as a second-round pick, took him 1 year to get ready. That was a second-round pick out of Notre Dame, a college where offensive linemen usually come in and can play, whether they are fifth-round picks or second-round picks. This is Jarrett Kingston, a 6th-round, 215th overall offensive lineman that really doesn't have a position just yet. His body's not right. He doesn't have the stature or weight to play on the outside, so he has to play the interior. And because he has to play the interior, his body's not going to allow him currently to play in the NFL. If you're expecting anything, which I wouldn't be, from Jarrett Kingston in year 1, remove all the expectations you have. If he plays, you are in the worst timeline because that means everybody else got hurt. Now, with that said, I do think because Jarrett Kingston has the athletic traits and tools, I do think that if they can finally chip away the marble and make their David right and figure out their offensive line development, I think Jarrett Kingston could be a guard on this team in 3 years' time. And I think right now, the way the team is structured, there's no pressure on him. Now, 6th-round pick, there really should never be the expectation to start or play year 1. Now, if it happens and he plays well and flourishes, great. Everybody wants that. That said, the way this offensive line is currently structured, right? You have On the interior, you have Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and you have John Feliciano. Now, behind Feliciano, you have Burford. Behind Banks, you have Barch. Then you have Nick Zakel. Jarrett Kingston right now, and I don't think I'm forgetting anybody, but right now, Jarrett Kingston is, what is that? He's the 7th interior offensive lineman on the pecking order. Like, his entire job this training camp and OTAs is to beat out Nick Zakel, to become the third guard as Ben Barch becomes the backup center. That's the goal. But I also wouldn't be shocked if he's practice squad, on the practice squad this year and you don't hear much about him. That's what feels like Jarrett Kingston to me. It's no knock on him. It's just you're at USC. You went under a coaching regime change and you played in arguably one of the worst places to be an offensive lineman. When's the last great offensive lineman that came out of USC? It doesn't happen. Now, doesn't mean it can't happen, but it doesn't happen. And so Jarrett Kingston, there is a lot of athletic traits to like. There just needs to be a good almost half a decade of coaching to get him ready for the NFL. Because Kyle Shanahan obviously likes him for a reason. He wants to see you downfield with the receivers, opening up lanes and blocking in space. Kingston can do that. It's just on the offensive line, he'll be an outright liability for Brock Purdy. In year one, might be in year two, and it might be until year 3 or 4 until Jarrett Kingston finally figures it out. Again, he's a 6th round pick. Once you get down to the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds, it's like, okay, we hope you become something. Again, that's what it is. You're hoping he becomes something. You aren't expecting him to. And I think the fan base doesn't have the expectations. I think for Jarrett Kingston, like watching his tape, you just kind of sit back and say, he's not raw. He played 5 years in college. He's not raw. It's almost just like you've been on the blacktop playing basketball, but you actually have all the athletic traits to succeed in high school or college. You just need a steering in the right direction. Jarrett Kingston just needs a steering in the right direction. Will that come with San Francisco? Time will tell. But I can guarantee you, whoever he plays for, whether it be the Niners, if he even makes the roster, there are a lot of things to like out of Jarrett Kingston. I just think you're not going to really see a lot of that pay off until near the end of his current contract, which, who knows? By that time, like Kyle Shanahan said, might not be alive. So honestly, there isn't much to dislike out of Jarrett Kingston unless he fails to get his body right, but he's a project player. Don't expect much from him in year 1 or year 2. And don't be too angry at him if you don't see him for the next 3 years. That's just the kind of timeline he's on, and that's okay. Unless players like Michael Jurgens and Bo Limmer and Dallin Holker and Zach Hines and others I've already listed start playing well and someone goes down and we're like, well, we got Jarrett Kingston. Everyone's like, no, you got to sign somebody else. Like right now, Jarrett Kingston truly doesn't have a spot on the roster for obvious reasons. He's not ready, but also I don't think this pick was for now. This pick was clearly, in case Aaron Banks leaves, in case Jake Brendel retires in a couple years. Again, Brendel's in like his mid-30s already. In case Feliciano goes, which it seems like he will, and in case they can't resign Burford, Zakel, or Ben Barch. So this move was clearly for the future, which many of the moves are. Pearsall was for now and the future. Cowing for now and the future. Grendo for now and the future. And if you listen to how Kyle Shanahan talks about Grendo, which I also said, pat myself on the back for a second there, right? It'll take Grendo some time. He just hasn't done it all at Louisville or Wisconsin. The same thing kind of goes for Kingston, albeit Grendo has a higher chance of actually playing in year 1 than Kingston does. So That's all I have on Jarrett Kingston. Short, quick, to the point. Want to kindly ask you to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to save $20 off any sporting event, whether it be MLB, NBA playoffs, or the NFL, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. All right, folks, I gotta go and get married. When I come back, I'll be hitched, and hopefully we've hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. And until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.